interest in the outcome. So when Governor Hickenlooper said yesterday at the COGA meeting, he couldn't understand why companies wouldn't just flock to the opportunity to be transparent. I agree with the governor. And I've been saying that from the beginning. There's no reason to keep this thing a mystery. And the fact that citizens are concerned, and NPR had a story yesterday morning on the Marcellus wells and Marcellus water. And you could listen to it, and I think the reporting was accurate and the reporting was fair. But two people listening to it could come away with two different conclusions. One is fracking's safe, the other is fracking's not safe. What the industry does to express to the public the safety of fracking is essential to whether or not the natural gas that we have will get fully developed in the ways that it could. And I believe we should develop that natural gas. I'm in favor of affordable energy. I started Citizens for Affordable Energy because if energy is not affordable, what good is it? It's got to be affordable. And affordable means, the definition of affordable is not cheap. I didn't use the word cheap, Citizens for Cheap Energy. No. Affordable means the supply is always greater than the demand. That worked for us in the 20th century, I believe, where the availability of energy was always greater than the demand for energy, and we had affordable energy to build this nation. We continue to need affordable energy, which means the supply has to exceed the demand. Companies don't have to deal with that. They're not going to go bust with increased supply. They've made it through the last 100 years. They'll make it through the next 100 years, balancing the availability issue. But I think we don't have public acceptance. We won't frack, not to the extent that we are. But otherwise, it's a great resource. Thank you.
He gave me the mic. Two questions. What do we do with corporate tax structure to help your scenario? Second question, I've been to China, and you can't breathe. So we have to deal with that issue with their growth. They're not going to quit growing. So there's two concerns about environment and tax structure and how can they work to grow our energy and make our air safe, and who's paying?
One thing I would say, and I'll speak for the big oil companies now because I was part of that segment of the industry. Big oil knows it has a tax duty and responsibility to whatever geopolitical entity it operates in. No argument. There's no argument that oil companies know they have to pay taxes. What the oil companies testified to in early June, when the CEOs were up there one more time over gas prices, was this issue of tax fairness. And every one of the companies said what has been said many times over. We don't come asking for tax breaks, but if you give us tax breaks, then if you're going to change the tax policy, let's talk about that before you just unilaterally do something that negatively impacts our business model. And they all testified to the fact that fully willing to have zero tax breaks, provided there was a broad public discussion of, well, what should the tax policy be? Because the companies have a view that they want a level playing field. They want to be able to compete in this geopolitical entity called the United States of America, and they want to be successful in this country. But let's just clean up the whole tax code. Let's figure out how we want to manage it. Take away all the exemptions. That's fine. But let's figure out how we're going to do this in a rational, reasonable way. Not just pick on 5 companies to take away the exemptions for 5 companies. That's what they're opposed to. With respect to the environment, you're absolutely right. I just got back from China 2 weeks ago and had to, once again, I got a respiratory infection. Each time I go, I come back sick. And I don't like antibiotics, but it was the only way to knock it out. And it's filthy. It's just filthy, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't been there, I would go so far as to use the word disgusting. And if that shows up in the newspaper, so be it. The land, the water, the air is under such strain and abuse, and it's not getting any better. Downtown Shanghai, noon on Saturday, you can see 4 blocks down the street because of the particulates in the atmosphere. 30 miles out of town at the Pudong Airport, you can begin to see blue sky. Filthy. And have this kind of environmental disaster taking place every day. So enormous pressure has to be brought to bear on that situation. I've never met any American that doesn't stand for clean air, clean land, and clean water. How we go about it is a debate for the public to have, but I don't think energy companies should resist clean air, clean land, clean water, because they're part of this society. So how they clean up the mess that they make, which a lot of companies do. You can go to drilling sites today and they look quite different than they did 20, 30 years ago. A, they're smaller. B, they're cleaner. C, they meet the regulations. Companies are pretty good at compliance because they lose the license to operate if they're not. So I'm all in favor of the necessary regulations. And I think that's built into the business model, the cost of those.
We have time for one more question.
Are you encouraged concerning Colorado public policy under Governor Hickenlooper?
I must say that I don't follow it as closely as I used to, but I've known Governor Hickenlooper since I met him at a fundraiser in Houston about a year and a half ago, before he was elected. And we had time at this at a person's house to discuss the totality of energy. And while I didn't push him hard on the Piceance Basin issue, which I don't know his position on the Piceance Basin, I think that my own view of Colorado is it's one of the leading states in the nation on getting its head around energy and moving forward progressively and responsibly. And so I think Colorado is one of those states, along with Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana, which will largely sit out the energy abyss that the rest of the country will experience later this decade. Because I think it has its head together. It's an energy have state. We have a lot of energy have not states that are going to be in a real pickle, a real predicament with respect to electrons and liquid fuels, but I think Colorado will be sitting pretty. And then you will be inundated with people moving to Colorado because you're an energy have state, and then your infrastructure will not keep up with the number of people moving here, so you will have consequences of being an energy have state that you'll have to deal with. Texas is already experiencing it. Something like 2,500 people a day move to Texas from other parts of the country every day. And it's a huge migration to Texas, and the water and the infrastructure has to keep up with it. But I think Colorado's in a pretty good place. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.